our next speaker, Naveen Selvadurai. He is an internet entrepreneur and co-founder of a location-based social networking site called Foursquare.com. All right. So Naveen graduated with degrees from King's College London in the UK and WPI in the US. And he went to work with Lucent, Sony, Nokia, and Sun Microsystems before co-founding his mobile social networking venture Foursquare. He has been on Fox Business Network and CNN special by Fareed Zakaria, getting American back to #1, talking about how he has become the person he is today. So let's give it for Naveen Selvadurai.
Thanks, guys. How many of you use Foursquare? I was just curious. It's a good number. I like it. I like it. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, so I'm actually I'm going to tell you some stories about my life. I'm going to give you a little bit of advice in terms of what I've learned and like good things to keep in mind as you go through your life. And I'm going to do something interesting here. I'm actually going to do a reverse timeline. I'm going to tell my story in reverse. So I'll start with Foursquare because it was the last thing I did. So how many of you have phones in your pocket right now? Almost everyone here, right? Everyone's got a phone. So about 10 years ago when I started doing and learning a bit more about phones and wanting to design for phones, I realized that, you know, as they got more and more powerful and as more people had them in their pockets, we'd want to do more with them than just talk on the phone or send texts or, you know, these really smart devices, these really smart computers should be able to tell us more about our worlds and about our friends and all this stuff. So those ideas really stayed in my head for a long time. So in Foursquare, what we tried to do is create an app. We learned a lot about phones. We learned a lot about GPS. We learned about location systems and social networks and how people actually could interact with such devices. And we started to build a really great application to solve a few of the things that we wanted to see in the world. Namely, how do we get our phones to tell us more about what's going on, both in the real world, about places, about our neighborhoods, cool stories that we might be able to find out about, let's say, New York City, where we lived. As well as tell us more about what our friends are up to. You know, what parties are they going to, what new places are they going to, parks, bike rides that they're going on, things that I don't know about the city that my friends know, and how do I find out about them? So that's what we try to do in Foursquare. So we created an application for iPhone, Android, all sorts of devices that makes it really fun to use and tells the story of your city, of New York, and then tells the story of your friends. So how did I get down that path? I got down that path because I spent a lot of years actually traveling. I spent about 5 or 6 years before Foursquare, before starting it up, traveling all around the world. And everywhere I went, I just wanted to tell my friends what I was doing. I'd take photos. I wanted to leave tips behind. If they wanted to go to similar places, I would give them tips about what places to go to and what to do and what to see. So I thought, you know, wouldn't it be really fun if I could make something like a Foursquare that I'd be able to tell these stories on? Because such a thing didn't really exist back then. So one of my rules has always been, and I think of this even more now, is to see the world. I think that's really important. I was really lucky even when I was really young. I grew up in India. We traveled around the world for quite a bit. When I was 9, I actually got to sail most of the way around the world with my parents, my mom and my dad. So I've been to a lot of different countries. And since then, I've always had this itch to travel, this desire to like see new places, meet new people, learn new languages, eat all sorts of really amazing food. So I think that's something important that you want to keep in your mind. So before that period of travel, I actually worked at Sony Music. And I found myself there because I was working and helping some friends out with a small company that Sony bought. And the small company was trying to bring 2 of my most favorite things at the time, computers, mobile, as well as music together. You know, we had music on you know, with things like Napster 10 or 12 years ago, and MP3.com and all these different sites. MP3s were becoming really popular. You could listen to digital music. The iPod wasn't really out yet. So we thought, wouldn't it be really cool if we could bring music to our phones? Like, we should be able to like download music anytime we want to. We should have an app store for music. So this is before iTunes existed. So these guys were really onto something really great, and I really loved their idea. So I joined up with them, and then eventually we went to build this really amazing thing at Sony. So that taught me a second lesson, which is to keep really good company. These 3 guys that I worked with actually is the reason that I found myself in an amazing company like Sony, and I made, you know, I had a decent salary, I had a lot of fun. I had like 4 years that I spent there was like some of the best 4 years I've ever remember having. It was better like than high school and college, and my high school and college experience was really fun. So that's my second thought, is to keep good company. And you know what company is. Company is basically the companionship or the people that you are around. So I think it's really important at any given time in your life, always hang out with really great people, because you're going to have really great conversation with them. You're going to be inspired by them. They're going to push you to be better than you really would be otherwise. Another thing that happened too, the Sony gig and those guys actually got me to move to New York City. I had no idea that I would ever come to New York. I used to live in Connecticut before I moved here. I've been in New York for 9 years now, and I guess now I can say I'm a real New Yorker. But before that, I hardly ever traveled to the city. I always thought it was like this big, scary place. I had no friends here. I had no reason to really come here, and they made me do it. So that leads me to my third kind of thought in my statement, which is choose the path with the most possibilities. Had I not come to New York, I probably would have been on my old path, which is work at a big company, have a nice car, drive home every day, do the same thing over and over again. But the fact that I came to New York opened up even more possibilities than I would have probably had I not come here, right? Because New York gave me new friends, New York gave me many new companies, many new ideas, a lot more travel experiences. You guys know what the city is like. There's so much fun stuff to do here, and I probably wouldn't have had that. So at any given time, I always like to think, choose the path that's going to give you the most number of things that you can choose from. So if you think of a tree, the tree has a branch, the tree has root, obviously, and then they have a trunk, and the trunk leads to many different branches. And depending on the branch you choose, you could end up with even more choices of branches, and then more leaves. If you choose a branch that doesn't have so many possibilities, you're really limiting yourself. So at any given time when you're not sure what to do, just blow it out. Just go for the thing that will give you a lot of different things to choose from, right? Should I go to college or not? I think you should go to college. And you know why? Because it always leads me back to this thing, which is if you go to college, you're going to be in a new city, you're going to learn a lot of new subjects, you're going to make a lot of new friends, you're going to like really inspire you and open your mind in many, many, many different ways. So at any given time, don't limit yourself. Go for the biggest thing possible. When I was in college, I actually worked my way through college. I spent grad school and undergrad, and it was the craziest 4 years ever. And I worked through college. I worked through the summer. I actually had a job usually either during the day and I went to school at night, or I had a job at night and I went to school during the day. It was the most hectic, crazy 4 years ever. But it was also some of the most productive 4 years because I was always digesting information. I was learning at work. I was learning at school. In school, I would learn the philosophy of what is engineering? How do all these pieces fit together? How do you code? Why do we even code? Why is math the way it is? How does math actually relate to computers and software and all these other things that I'm doing? And then at work, I'd learn other things how do I take all the things that I learned in class and actually make something real that other people can use, right? So I was able to connect the dots. So I was always learning something new, either from books, from others at work, or at school. So it was very, very, very a productive time in my life.